The mysterious SOS. The galaxy was vast, cold, and often unforgiving. Yet, in its infinite expanse, an event occurred that no one could have foreseen, a single desperate cry for help. It was a quiet day aboard humanity's Central Fleet Command, a massive station orbiting Earth. Officers went about their routines, scanning frequencies, monitoring patrol routes, and handling minor disputes from allied species. Nothing unusual, just another day ensuring humanity's place among the stars. That's when it happened. A piercing, static-laden signal broke through the routine calm. It wasn't just any signal. It was an SOS. The room fell silent as it played over the speakers. A voice, trembling and broken, whispered words that no one could ignore. "Help, please. They're everywhere. We're the last. You're the only hope." The voice faded, replaced by an eerie static that seemed to crawl under everyone's skin. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. The source of the signal. A system far beyond the edge of known space, an area long dismissed by explorers and charted only as Sector Omega-7. It was a place surrounded by myths of ships disappearing, haunted by ghostly tales of death and despair. "Run a diagnostic," Commander Helena Voss ordered, her voice steady, but her hands gripping the edge of the console. "It's real," replied an officer after a tense moment. "No signs of forgery. The distress beacons. Authentic." Helena's heart sank. Authentic meant someone, or something, was out there, desperate enough to call for help from one of the most feared species in the galaxy, humanity. As the signal played on a loop, a strange detail emerged. Buried in the static was a set of coordinates, clear as day. But there was something else, too, a final chilling message coded into the transmission. "Do not come. Death awaits." The words sent a ripple of unease through the room. What kind of distress signal begged for help but warned others to stay away? Admiral Marcus Kane, the head of the fleet, was brought in. A tall, imposing man with a grizzled beard and a reputation for making impossible decisions, Kane stood silently as the message replayed. His sharp eyes scanned the screen displaying the signal's origin. He knew the implications of responding to such a call. "Could be a trap," he said finally, his deep voice cutting through the tension. "Or it could be real," Helena argued. "If it is, they need us, and no one else is coming." Kane nodded slowly. "Assemble the fleet," he ordered. "We can't ignore this. Humanity doesn't leave survivors to die. Not when we can help." As word spread, the Deathworlder fleet prepared for departure. Unlike other species, humanity had earned the title of Deathworlders due to their home planet, Earth. A world teeming with danger at every turn, Earth had forged humanity into a race of survivors. Resilient, adaptable, and fearless. Their fleets were unmatched in the galaxy, not because of superior numbers, but because every human on board was trained to face the unthinkable. Among the chosen was Captain Adrian Cole, a man whose calm demeanor hid a brilliant tactical mind. He reviewed the details of the mission, his expression unreadable. The warning in the message echoed in his mind. Death awaits. As the fleet mobilized, ships hummed to life. The Resolute, the flagship of the mission, led the way, its sleek design bristling with weaponry and cutting-edge technology. Hundreds of crew members boarded their vessels, each carrying a mix of dread and determination. The final moments before departure were heavy with tension. Families sent messages to loved ones, unsure if they would return. The unknown lay ahead, a vast expanse of silence and mystery. On board the Resolute, Captain Cole addressed his crew. "We've been called to action," he began. "The signal may be a trap. It may lead us into danger we've never faced before. But if it's real, if there are lives out there depending on us, then we have a duty to act. Humanity doesn't turn away from the unknown. We face it head-on, together." The crew erupted into a chorus of agreement. Whatever awaited them, they would meet it as one. As the fleet departed Earth's orbit, the message continued to play on a loop. "Help, please. They're everywhere. But as the fleet traveled deeper into uncharted space, the signal began to change. The once distorted whispers became sharper, clearer. Background static turned into faint, chilling sounds, unidentifiable noises that seemed alive. Some crew members swore they heard screams. "This isn't just a distress signal," a communications officer murmured to themselves, their hands trembling. "It's a warning." In the quiet of the Resolute's command deck, Captain Cole stared out at the endless stars. Somewhere out there, someone was waiting for them, or something was. The signal played once more. "Do not come. Death awaits." Cole's jaw tightened. "We're coming anyway." And with that, humanity's Deathworlder fleet hurtled toward the unknown, carrying the weight of hope and the possibility of annihilation. Humanity's Deathworlder fleet. As the fleet cut through the void of space, the vastness of their task became apparent. The Resolute led a formation of 30 ships, each one a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. From towering dreadnoughts armed with enough firepower to destroy planets to agile frigates designed for swift maneuvers, the fleet represented the very best of humanity. But it wasn't just the ships that made them fearsome. It was the people. Humans had earned their reputation as Deathworlders, a species forged on a planet of relentless challenges. Earth's gravity was harsher, its predators deadlier, its environment more volatile than almost any other inhabited world in the galaxy. To the galaxy's gentler species, Earth was a place of nightmares. To humans, it was home. The crew aboard the Resolute was no exception. Lieutenant Sarah Vega, a biologist turned soldier, checked the calibration on her exosuit. Once she had studied alien life forms, cataloging their behaviors. Now she prepared to face them in battle. Beside her, Ensign Kyle Drayton, a hotshot pilot with a cocky grin, tinkered with a miniature drone. "Think it's a trap?" Kyle asked, his tone light, but his hand steady. Sarah glanced at him. "Does it matter? We're going either way." Kyle smirked, spoken like a true Deathworlder. In the command center, Captain Adrian Cole studied the latest reports. His officers worked in coordinated chaos, running simulations, preparing defenses, and ensuring the fleet was battle-ready. Cole was calm, as always, but his mind raced. The distress signal was too strange, too perfect. A voice desperate for help, but warning against rescue. Coordinates provided with precision. It felt orchestrated, yet the fear in the voice was undeniable. If it was a trap, it was a masterful one. Admiral Marcus Kane appeared on the holoscreen. His gruff voice carried across the bridge. "Captain Cole, how's your crew holding up?" "They're ready, Admiral," Cole replied. "Whatever's out there, we'll face it." "Good. Remember, this isn't just about survival. This is about sending a message. Humanity doesn't run. Not from shadows, not from myths. We're the ones who walk into the fire." Cole nodded. Humanity's reputation as Deathworlders wasn't just about their toughness. It was about their defiance, their refusal to bow to fear. The fleet's journey wasn't without peril. As they approached Sector Omega-7, the region's infamous hazards became apparent. Space itself seemed alive with danger. Gravitational anomalies pulled at the ships, forcing constant adjustments. Asteroid clusters moved unpredictably, their trajectories chaotic. On the Resolute, the navigation officer called out, "Captain, we're detecting an uncharted gravitational vortex ahead." Cole leaned forward. "Options. We can plot a detour, but it'll delay us by several hours. Or," the officer hesitated, "we could punch through. The fleet's shields should hold, but it'll be rough." Cole considered for a moment. "We don't have time for detours. Signal the fleet. We're going through." The fleet braced as they entered the vortex. Violent turbulence rocked the ships, testing their structural integrity. On board the Resolute, sparks flew as systems overloaded. Crew members gritted their teeth, holding their stations as the ship groaned under the pressure. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the vortex released them. The fleet emerged on the other side, battered but intact. As they neared the source of the SOS, the true scope of the mission began to take shape. Long-range scans revealed the remnants of a battle, a massive debris field stretching across millions of kilometers. The scene was grim. Shattered hulks of alien ships floated lifelessly, their designs unfamiliar to even the most experienced engineers. Some were massive, dwarfing even humanity's largest dreadnoughts. Others were sleek and agile, built for speed and precision. All of them were destroyed. Lieutenant Sarah Vega studied the data on her console. Multiple species designs. This wasn't a single fleet. It was an alliance. And they still lost. Cole's jaw tightened. What could destroy an entire alliance? Before anyone could answer, the Resolute's sensors picked up a faint energy signature. At the heart of the debris field was a single structure. An alien station, battered but still operational. "Sir, it's the source of the SOS," the communications officer reported. Cole stood. "Prepare an away team. I want answers." The fleet moved cautiously toward the station, their weapons systems on high alert. The closer they got, the more unsettling the scene became. The debris wasn't just scattered, it was scorched, as if by an unimaginable force. On board the station, life signs were faint but present. As the away team boarded, they found themselves in a scene of horror. The station's interior was dark, its walls scarred with burns and claw marks. Bodies of alien crew members lay where they had fallen, their faces frozen in terror. Then they heard it. A sound like whispers, faint and unintelligible, echoing through the halls. "This place is haunted," Kyle muttered, gripping his weapon tightly. At the heart of the station, they found the survivors, a handful of aliens, barely alive, huddled together. Their leader, a tall, insectoid being with iridescent wings, looked up at the humans with wide, frightened eyes. "You came," it rasped, its voice weak. "We warned you, but you came. What happened here?" Sarah asked gently, though her voice carried a steel edge. "They came," the alien replied. "Shadows. They consumed everything. You should have stayed away." As the away team prepared to return to the fleet, the station shuddered. Alarms blared as sensors picked up movement in the debris field. Something was coming. Back on the Resolute, Cole's voice rang out. "All ships to battle stations. Prepare for contact." The shadows were here, and humanity was about to meet them. The journey to the unknown. The fleet plunged deeper into Sector Omega-7, a region that felt like the galaxy's forgotten graveyard. The stars seemed dimmered here, their light swallowed by the void. Space itself felt wrong, unnervingly silent, as if holding its breath. On board the Resolute, Captain Adrian Cole stood at the helm, scanning the expanse ahead. Around him, the crew worked with a precision born from training and fear. Everyone felt it. The oppressive weight of the unknown, pressing against their minds like an invisible force. "Captain," said Lieutenant Vega, her voice tense, "we're detecting faint energy fluctuations in the debris field ahead. It's not natural." Cole frowned. "Define not natural." Vega hesitated. "It's as if something's moving, but not in any way I can explain. Almost like the space itself is alive." A chill settled over the bridge. The crew had faced dangers before, pirates, alien warlords, rogai, but this was different. This was something they couldn't see, couldn't understand. As the fleet moved cautiously through the debris field, the wreckage told a grim story. Shattered ships floated aimlessly, their hulls marked with scars that defied logic. Some bore massive gouges, as if clawed apart by something impossibly large. Others were burned to husks, their metallic surfaces melted and twisted. "It's like they were torn apart by nightmares," muttered Ensign Kyle Drayton from his seat in the tactical bay. "You believe in nightmares now?" Vega asked, her tone dry but her eyes wary. "After this, I just might." Suddenly, an alarm blared. "Contact," shouted the sensor officer. Unknown signatures approaching fast. Cole snapped into action. On screen, the main display lit up, revealing a terrifying sight. In the distance, shapes began to emerge from the darkness, indistinct, shadow-like figures that seemed to ripple and distort, blending seamlessly with the void. "What are we looking at?" Cole demanded. "No idea," Vega said, her voice tight. "They're not showing up as solid objects. It's like they're made of the void itself." The fleet moved into defensive formations, weapons systems primed. The tension was palpable as the shadows grew closer, their movements defying conventional physics. They darted in and out of visibility, as if testing the fleet's resolve. The Resolute fired the first shot, a warning burst aimed at the nearest shadow. The beam of energy streaked through space, but instead of impacting, it passed through harmlessly, as if the shadow wasn't there. "That's impossible," muttered Drayton. "Captain," Vega said urgently, "these things aren't physical. They're something else." Cole clenched his fists. "Then we'll adapt. Send the data to the science team. We need answers. Fast." As the shadows encircled the fleet, the temperature aboard the ships began to drop. Frost crept across control panels, and the lights flickered. Crew members reported hearing faint whispers, like ghostly voices calling out from the void. "Is this some kind of psychological attack?" Cole asked, his voice cutting through the rising panic. "Possibly," Vega replied. "But the effects are too consistent across the fleet. It's more than just fear. It's invasive." The science team worked frantically, analyzing the shadow's movements and the strange phenomena. Their findings were grim. "Captain," the chief scientist said over the comms, "these entities aren't attacking in a conventional sense. They're feeding." Feeding. Cole's brow furrowed. "On what?" "On energy, heat, light, even the ship's reactor outputs. They're draining us." The realization hit like a thunderbolt. The shadows weren't just predators. They were parasites, stripping the fleet of its lifeblood. If they stayed in the debris field any longer, the fleet would be rendered powerless, left adrift and defenseless. "We need to get out of here," Cole ordered. "Plot a course to the edge of the field." The fleet began to retreat, engines flaring as they pushed through the oppressive darkness. The shadows followed, their movements growing more aggressive. Ships reported systems failing, power reserves dwindling. On the Resolute, Vega stared at her console. "Captain, the shadows are hurting us." Cole's jaw tightened. "Hurting us where?" Before anyone could answer, the fleet emerged from the debris field and into a vast open space. The sight before them was both awe-inspiring and horrifying. A massive structure loomed in the void, ancient and alien. Its surface was covered in glowing runes that pulsed faintly, as if alive. Surrounding it were thousands of smaller objects, ships, satellites, and debris, all arranged in a precise orbit. "It's a graveyard," Vega whispered. The shadows halted, circling the fleet at a distance, as if waiting. "Captain," said the communications officer, "we're receiving the signal." "From the station?" Cole asked. "No, sir. From them." The whispers intensified, flooding the comm channels. They formed words now, chilling and deliberate. "Welcome, Deathworlders. Your turn has come." The fleet stood frozen, caught between an ancient terror and the predatory shadows surrounding them. The message was clear. Humanity had been lured here, not to save lives, but to face its own reckoning. The grim discovery. The Resolute drifted closer to the massive alien station. Its surface, jagged and ancient, seemed to whisper secrets of a time long forgotten. The glowing runes pulsed like a heartbeat, filling the crew with an eerie sense of being watched. Around the station, debris floated in a perfect orbit, a silent reminder of countless battles lost. Captain Adrian Cole stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the station. "What do we know?" Lieutenant Sarah Vega's voice carried over the tense silence. "It's old. Thousands of years, maybe more. No known species in the galaxy has built anything like it. The runes, They're emitting faint energy, but it's unlike anything we've seen before. And the shadows? Cole asked. They've stopped advancing, Vega replied, her tone uneasy. They're circling us, but it's like they're waiting for something. Cole's gut churned. The shadows hadn't destroyed the fleet yet. That meant they had a purpose. The question was, what? An away team was assembled to investigate the station. Cole personally selected the crew, knowing the risks. Vega volunteered immediately, her expertise in xenobiology invaluable. Alongside her was Ensign Kyle Drayton, for his resourcefulness, and Sergeant Elena Karst, a battle-hardened Marine who had faced the unthinkable and lived. As the team boarded a shuttle, the Resolute's crew watched in tense silence. The shadows kept their distance, an ominous reminder that escape was impossible. Stay sharp, Cole's voice came through the comms. This isn't a rescue mission, it's survival. Find out what we're dealing with, and get back here in one piece. The shuttle docked at an exposed section of the station. The team stepped into darkness, their lights cutting through the cold, silent corridors. The walls were lined with the same glowing rooms, their faint light casting eerie shadows. It's like walking into a tomb, Drayton muttered, his usual bravado gone. Karst, ever pragmatic, scanned the area with her rifle. Stay focused. We don't know what's in here. As they moved deeper into the station, the whispers began. Faint at first, like distant echoes, they grew louder with every step. The words were incomprehensible, but the tone was unmistakable. Pleas, cries, warnings. This place is alive, Vega whispered, her hand brushing the wall. These rooms, they're more than decoration. They're part of the station. Drayton gave her a skeptical look. Alive? You're saying we're inside a living thing. Not alive like us, Vega clarified. Alive like a machine with a soul. The whispers suddenly stopped, replaced by a low hum. A doorway slid open ahead of them, revealing a massive chamber. The team entered cautiously. The chamber was vast, its ceiling disappearing into darkness. In the center stood a massive crystalline structure, its surface pulsating with energy. Surrounding it were consoles and panels, ancient and worn but still active. Looks like some kind of core, Vega said, stepping closer. Karst's rifle was trained on the shadows flickering at the edges of the chamber. Let's figure it out fast. This place gives me the creeps. Vega examined the core, her fingers brushing over the controls. As she activated a console, a holographic image sprang to life. It showed a galactic map, but not as they knew it. The stars were different, arranged in patterns long lost to time. What is this? Drayton asked, peering over her shoulder. It's a record, Vega said, her voice trembling. This station, it's a warning. These runes aren't just energy. They're a containment field. It's holding something. The realization hit them like a cold wave. What's it holding? Karst asked, her grip tightening on her rifle. Before Vega could answer, the whispers returned, louder and more frantic. The core pulsed brighter, and the station began to shake. Back on the Resolute, alarms blared as the shadows surged forward. Captain, the shadows are breaching our defensive perimeter, shouted the tactical officer. Hold the line, Cole ordered. His eyes darted to the holographic display showing the away team's location. Vega, what's going on in there? Vega's voice crackled over the comms. The station's core is destabilizing. Captain, this isn't just a station. It's a prison. The shadows, they're part of it. They're trying to break free. Cole's heart sank. Can you stop it? We're trying, Vega replied, panic creeping into her voice. But this technology, it's beyond anything we've seen. In the chamber, the team worked frantically. Vega deciphered the runes, her mind racing to understand the alien language. Drayton rerouted power to the containment field, his hands moving with a speed born of desperation. Karst stood guard, her rifle aimed at the encroaching shadows. We don't have much time, Vega shouted, If the core fails, the shadows will be unleashed. And they won't stop with this system. Drayton cursed under his breath. Tell me you've got a plan. I'm working on it. Vega snapped. The shadows began to press into the chamber, their forms rippling with malevolent intent. Karst opened fire, her bullets passing through them harmlessly. Vega, whatever you're doing, do it faster, Karst yelled. At the last moment, Vega found the solution. The containment field. It needs a massive energy surge to stabilize. Drayton stared at her. Massive? How massive? She hesitated. We'd have to overload the Resolute's reactor. Are you out of your mind? Drayton said. That'll kill us. It's that, or we all die anyway, Vega replied, her eyes meeting his. Karst's voice cut through the argument. Do it. I'd rather go down fighting than let these things loose. Cole received the grim report and made the call. All ships, redirect power to the Resolute's reactor. Prepare for overload. As the fleet funneled energy into the flagship, the station's core glowed brighter. The shadows shrieked, their forms destabilizing. Vega activated the containment field just as the reactor reached critical. The station's runes flared, trapping the shadows once more. The team barely escaped as the core sealed itself, leaving the fleet in stunned silence. But as the Resolute retreated, a final message played from the station. You have delayed the inevitable, Deathworlders. The shadows will return. And they will not come alone. The enemy revealed. The silence in the aftermath was deafening. The fleet hummed in the void, battered and shaken but alive. The alien station had stabilized, its glowing rooms dimming once more. For a moment, it seemed as though the shadows had been defeated. But deep down, everyone knew this wasn't over. On the Resolute, Captain Cole surveyed the damage reports. Hull breaches, power fluctuations, and casualties. It was a grim tally, but it could have been far worse. Status of the station, he asked. Lieutenant Vega responded, her voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. The containment field is holding. For now. But whatever the shadows are, they're not gone. They're waiting. Cole frowned. Waiting for what? Before Vega could answer, the ship's sensors blared an urgent warning. Captain, we've got movement, shouted the tactical officer. All ships, report, Cole barked. The view screen lit up, showing the debris field. It was shifting, pieces of wreckage moving as if guided by an unseen force. Slowly, the fragments began to coalesce, forming massive structures. The realization hit like a thunderclap. The shadows weren't just entities. They were builders. They're reconstructing, Vega whispered. As the fleet watched in stunned silence, the debris coalesced into a massive, jagged form, a ship, if it could even be called that. Its design was alien and grotesque, a twisted amalgamation of broken parts held together by tendrils of shadow. It pulsed with a dark energy, its very presence radiating malice. They're creating a flagship, Vega said, horror in her voice. Cole turned to the tactical officer. Weapons ready. All ships, prepare to fire. But before the fleet could act, the shadow flagship surged forward with impossible speed. A wave of energy erupted from its core, disabling several smaller ships. The lights flickered aboard the Resolute as the energy swept through, leaving a trail of chaos. Shields down to 40%, reported the tactical officer. They're testing us, Vega muttered, her mind racing. They're learning. Cole's jaw tightened. Then we won't give them the chance. Target their core. Full barrage. The fleet unleashed its firepower. Dreadnoughts fired plasma cannons, frigates launched torpedoes, and the Resolute led the assault with precision strikes. The void lit up with the fury of humanity's arsenal. But the shadows adapted. The flagship's tendrils absorbed the energy, redirecting it into powerful counterattacks. Ships were hit with beams of dark energy, their hulls disintegrating on contact. They're feeding off our weapons, Drayton shouted from the tactical bay. Switch to kinetic rounds, Cole ordered. No energy-based attacks. The fleet adapted, firing solid projectiles. The first volley struck the Shadow flagship, breaking off pieces of its jagged hull. For the first time, it recoiled. "We've got their attention," Karst muttered, her rifle ready. The battle raged, but the fleet's efforts only bought time. The Shadow flagship grew stronger with each passing moment, its tendrils spreading like a virus. Smaller shadow constructs began forming from the debris, attacking the fleet in swarms. On the Resolute, Vega worked frantically at her console. "Captain, I think I've found something. The shadows are using the station's containment field as a power source. If we can sever the connection, we can weaken them." Cole nodded. "Do it. We'll hold them off." Vega transmitted the plan to the fleet. Smaller ships were tasked with distracting the shadows, drawing their fire while the Resolute moved into position. As the flagship closed in, Cole gave the order. "All power to forward shields. We're going in." The Resolute surged toward the station, dodging tendrils of shadow and returning fire with surgical precision. On board, Vega and Drayton worked to disable the station's energy relays. Karst guarded the bridge, firing at shadow constructs that breached the hull. "We don't have much time, Captain," she called out. The Resolute reached the station's core just as the Shadow flagship loomed over them. Vega activated the overrides, severing the energy flow. The station's runes dimmed, and the shadows faltered, their movements growing erratic. "Now's our chance," Cole shouted. "Target the flagship. Fire everything we've got." The fleet unleashed a coordinated assault, their kinetic rounds tearing through the weakened flagship. With a final, deafening roar, the shadow construct collapsed, its fragments disintegrating into nothingness. The shadows began to retreat, drawn back into the containment field. The station's runes glowed faintly, sealing the darkness once more. The fleet stood victorious, but the cost was high. On the bridge, Cole exhaled deeply. "Status: the shadows are contained," Vega reported. "For now." Drayton leaned back in his chair, his usual grin replaced by a somber expression. "We won, but they're not gone, are they?" "No," Vega said quietly. "And they'll be back. Stronger." As the fleet regrouped, a final message played from the station, echoing in every ship. "You have delayed the inevitable. The shadows are only the beginning. Prepare yourselves, Deathworlders. A greater darkness stirs. Humanity's counterattack." The silence after the battle was deafening, but it wasn't the peace of triumph. It was the calm before the storm. The fleet had bought itself a momentary reprieve, but the message from the alien station lingered in everyone's mind. "You have delayed the inevitable." Captain Adrian Cole stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his gaze fixed on the alien station in the distance. The containment field glowed faintly, its light dim but steady. Around the fleet, debris floated in eerie stillness, the remnants of the Shadow flagship dissipating into nothingness. "Status report," Cole ordered. Lieutenant Vega, pale but focused, responded. "Shadows contained for now. But the station's field is unstable. If they break out again, we might not be able to stop them." Cole nodded grimly. "Then we don't wait for them to come back. We strike first." In the fleet's war room, Cole gathered his senior officers. The atmosphere was tense but resolute. Humanity had faced extinction before, and each time it had fought back harder than anyone expected. "This isn't a defensive mission anymore," Cole began, his voice firm. "We've seen what they can do. If we let them regroup, they'll consume everything in their path. We can't allow that." Admiral Kane appeared on the holoscreen, his expression as stern as ever. "You're suggesting we go on the offensive, Captain, against an enemy we barely understand." "Yes, sir," Cole replied. "The station's containment field is powered by something ancient, but it's failing. The shadows are tethered to it. If we destroy the station, we cut off their lifeline. They'll be weakened, vulnerable." Kane stroked his beard thoughtfully. "And what happens if destroying the station doesn't stop them? What if it sets them free entirely?" Cole's jaw tightened. Then we'll face them on our terms. I'd rather fight them now than wait for them to grow stronger. After a long pause, Kane nodded. You have the fleet, Captain. Make it count. The plan was simple but dangerous. The fleet would divide into two groups. One would act as a diversion, drawing the shadows away from the station. The other, led by the Resolute, would infiltrate the station and deliver a payload, a massive antimatter warhead designed to obliterate the core. Vega and her team were tasked with guiding the warhead to its destination. Drayton, ever resourceful, would pilot the shuttle carrying it. Karst and her Marines would provide protection. Let's be clear, Cole said during the briefing. This is a one-shot mission. If we fail, there won't be a second chance. Are we clear? The team nodded, their faces set with determination. As the fleet approached the station, the shadows began to stir. The containment field pulsed erratically, its light flickering like a dying flame. The shadow constructs, still weakened from the last battle, began to reform. Diversion team, engage. Cole commanded. The diversion fleet launched its assault, bombarding the shadows with kinetic rounds and high-intensity flares. The shadows reacted, surging toward the attackers with an almost animalistic fury. Hold the line, shouted the commander of the diversion fleet. Meanwhile, the Resolute and its strike team slipped past the chaos, moving toward the station's core. Inside the station, the team encountered resistance almost immediately. The shadows, though tethered to the containment field, were still a formidable presence. Tendrils of dark energy lashed out, forcing the team to fight their way forward. Karst led the charge, her Marines using flamethrowers and specialized explosives to carve a path. Keep moving, she barked. We're not stopping until that warhead's in place. Vega and Drayton worked in tandem, navigating the station's labyrinthine corridors. The rooms on the walls pulsed angrily, as if the station itself was trying to repel them. This place doesn't want us here, Drayton muttered. Good, Vega replied. That means we're getting close. The team reached the core chamber, the massive crystalline structure glowing with an ominous light. The containment field flickered, and the whispers returned, louder and more frantic than ever. Get the warhead in position, Karst ordered. Drayton and Vega worked quickly, attaching the device to the core. As they activated the warhead, the shadows surged into the chamber, their forms coalescing into a massive writhing entity. It's protecting the core, Karst shouted, firing her weapon. The Marines formed a defensive perimeter, holding off the shadows as Vega completed the activation sequence. Warhead armed, she yelled. We've got 5 minutes. The team fought their way back to the shuttle, the shadows growing more desperate with every step. Tendrils lashed out, tearing through walls and floors in a last-ditch effort to stop them. As they boarded the shuttle, Drayton fired up the engines. Hang on, he shouted, piloting the craft through the crumbling station. The Resolute coordinated their extraction, providing covering fire as the shuttle escaped. Diversion team, fall back, Cole ordered. The fleet withdrew, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the station. From the safety of the Resolute, the fleet watched as the warhead detonated. The station's core shattered in a blinding explosion, the rooms disintegrating into dust. The shadows let out a final, deafening shriek before collapsing into the void, their connection severed. The silence that followed was absolute. Status? Cole asked. Vega's voice came over the comms. The station's gone. The shadows, they're gone too. At least for now. The fleet erupted in cheers, but the victory was bittersweet. The cost had been high, and the warning from the shadows still echoed in their minds. Victory and the shadows' warning. The fleet floated in the void, battered but victorious. The alien station was gone, obliterated in a brilliant flash of light that marked the end of the shadows' reign over Sector Omega-7. For the first time in hours, a quiet calm settled over the ships. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Adrian Cole exhaled deeply, his hands gripping the edge of the console. Status report, he said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion etched into his face. "Shadows have dissipated," Lieutenant Vega confirmed. "No signs of activity. The containment field is gone, and the station, well, there's nothing left of it." "Casualties?" Cole asked. The communications officer hesitated before answering. "Heavy, sir. We've lost 6 ships entirely. Survivors are being recovered, but it's bad." Cole nodded grimly. The cost of victory was always steep, but this time it felt heavier. He turned to the bridge crew. "Let's bring our people home." As the fleet began its slow retreat from the battlefield, Vega worked at her console, analyzing the aftermath. The data pouring in from the destruction of the station painted a grim picture. "Captain," she said, her voice hesitant, "we need to talk." Cole joined her at the console, his expression unreadable. "What is it?" Vega pointed to a series of readings. The station wasn't just a containment field. It was a beacon. When we destroyed it, the shadows weren't just defeated. They were signaling something. Something bigger. Cole's stomach sank. "What kind of signal?" "A warning," Vega replied, her voice trembling. "Not for us. For them." The shadows weren't the apex predator. They were the prey. Back in the war room, Cole convened his senior officers and Admiral Kane via hologram. Vega presented her findings, the weight of the revelation hanging over the room like a storm cloud. "The shadows were powerful, yes," Vega began, "but they were also terrified. The containment field wasn't just to hold them, it was to protect them. Something out there drove them into hiding, and now, that something knows we're here." The room fell silent. Admiral Kane was the first to speak. "Are you saying we've awakened a greater threat?" Vega nodded. "Yes, sir. The destruction of the station sent a signal into deep space. Whatever drove the shadows into hiding. It's coming." The fleet's return to friendly space was somber. Survivors of the battle were treated for their injuries, and the fallen were honored in solemn ceremonies aboard each ship. The cost of the mission weighed heavily on everyone, but it was the uncertainty of what lay ahead that haunted them most. On board the Resolute, Cole addressed his crew. He stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars that had become their battleground. "We came here to answer a call for help," he began. "We faced the unknown, and we fought with everything we had. We won, but victory always comes with a price. The shadows are gone, but the fight isn't over. We've awakened something bigger, something we don't understand. But we're humans, Deathworlders. We don't back down, and we don't run. Whatever's coming, we'll face it. Together." The crew erupted into applause, their resolve stronger than ever. Weeks later, as the fleet returned to Earth, they received an unexpected message. It wasn't a distress signal this time. It was a transmission from deep space, in a language no one could identify. The message was brief but chilling. "We have seen your light in the void. We are coming." The fleet's officers gathered to decipher the message. Vega, exhausted but determined, worked tirelessly to decode the language. When she finally succeeded, her face went pale. "What does it say?" Cole asked. It's a challenge," Vega replied. "They're testing us. They want to know if we're strong enough to face them." Back at Fleet Command, Earth's leaders prepared for what was to come. Plans were drawn, alliances strengthened, and humanity's forces rebuilt. The shadows had been a nightmare, but they were only the beginning. Admiral Kane's words echoed across the galaxy as he addressed humanity's allies. "The universe is vast, and its dangers are endless. But we are humans. We thrive in chaos. We adapt. And no matter what comes next, we will stand together." The story closes with a final shot of the Resolute, its hull scared but standing strong. In the distance, faint flickers of light began to appear, unknown ships, approaching fast. Humanity had survived the shadows, but the true test of their resilience was only just beginning. And so the fleet prepared, not just to defend, but to fight. to show the galaxy what it truly meant to face a Deathworlder.